Darryl, I know you're there. You had to be close enough to the computer to hit that record button. Stop hiding your face. What is it that you can't face? What is it that you do not want me to see? Who are you to decide? So not only is she a lawyer who has, who was called to the bar in BC and Alberta, but she's also worked in politics, real estate. She's an entrepreneur and also a community advocate. And today, she is the most overqualified person to be on this show. Okay.
TK, can you hear me? Tell me you can hear me. Are you frozen? Are you pretending to be frozen? Are you a possum? Are you a possum?
Oh, that was good though, right? You saw that, right? You saw that.
I've
For a
been
second there,
watching
you thought I was frozen. You know what I have to tell you
really.
first things first, Daryl? Your hair looks amazing today. Okay?
Look at you trying to get on my good side. What are you about to hit me with?
It looks amazing. It looks like really nice.
TK,
we must have a female guest. We must have a female guest today.
You know how to get to me, TK.
It looks fantastic.
You know how to get to me. Well, it would look even more fantastic if it had like a big gold medal around my neck with it. Unlike somebody I know. Look at you, Mr. Champion.
Yeah, well,
did you win? What the hell did you win?
I won the second worst division there is.
Oh, look at Mr. Modest here. Hey? Like you're a bloody tank. That t-shirt you were wearing was a little tight, wasn't it?
Yeah, it's padded.
It's padded, yeah, it's like padded. Homelander.
I wear padded t-shirts.
On the Lost Boys?
Yeah.
You watched that show?
No, show. But what I did over time was I went to the gym and everybody else was lifting really heavy weights, right? And so they're all getting bigger. They're all like measuring their biceps and stuff like that. I come in with really baggy clothes, mostly just talk and drink water, right? And go on Facebook. And I just start wearing tighter and tighter shirts. And so after about 6 weeks, guys are like, man, you have changed.
What's going on?
I'm like, oh yeah, I've been trying some new supplements, right? But really the secret is, Darryl, tighter shirts.
Tighter shirts. Well, I'll tell you.
Yeah.
The secret for me is definitely not tighter shirts, because I'll tell you, it would have the opposite effect that you have wearing a tight shirt.
Good. Well, at least we know, what the secret is, right? It's all about perception.
It's all about perception. It's funny. I was wondering the other day, like some of the people that we have on the show or that we have on the show regularly and that or at least I talk to outside of the show, I've never met them in person. I wonder how tall they are, right? And then I wonder if they wonder how tall I am or how tall they think I am.
Who was it that we met that was super tall?
Who did we meet?
Maybe that's a fake story.
I don't remember meeting anyone.
But there was somebody that I met. It was somebody, I was pretty sure it was someone we had on the show. We've had so many guests now, but it was somebody who we did not expect to be as tall as they were. And it was like, whoa.
I feel like I remember that too, but I have no idea.
We've had a lot of shows.
What you're talking about.
We've done well over 100 shows.
Well over 100 shows. Yeah. This thing is on fire, TK. We are just growing leaps and bounds.
And today,
Not really,
but we're growing. Today we flew out to Vancouver just to have a special guest, right?
Very nice in Vancouver.
Get things moving forward. I like.
Not if you're in the real estate market in Vancouver, though. It's like a massacre. Do they think that there's a massacre in Ontario, and I think we think that there's a massacre in Vancouver, but there seems to be. Is there a massacre going on? I see all kinds of like numbers, and nothing corresponds to anything right now.
Yeah,
but I can tell you, it's scary out there, TK.
Is it scary though?
It is scary out there, TK.
I think we've got it all wrong. Yeah, we've got it all wrong. Maybe this is a topic we should wait for the guest to come on. But I can tell you personally that the inventory levels aren't anywhere close to where they need to be for a major catastrophic event. Nowhere close, Darryl.
But what is a major catastrophic event? Is
Well, you know,
20%? Is 15%? Is
maybe
48%?
maybe like like a few years of declines, or you know in 12 to 18 months, like a 40 to 60% decline, like a lot of people want to say it is going to happen. But I'm out there and everything I'm showing has got multiple offers, and I'm trying to find a list of places to take buyers to, and there's literally nothing to show them. It's difficult to find a house to buy in Toronto.
Hmm.
It's not easy.
No, I mean, you've
No,
got people
it's
reaching out to you, looking, hoping that you'll take on a client to help them find something, right?
there's lots of those, right? And it's definitely one of those situations where you got to guide people in a way to say to them, look, this is what you should expect, because reading in the news that the market is going to tank and that it's going to get them X, they're going to get X off the asking price, or they should expect that the prices are going to be down even lower by the end of Q3 or into 2023, or I mean, do we really know that that's going to happen? I can tell you right now that prices are down well below what they were in February. And
But how much down? Like, I'm having a tough time getting a reading on how down things
every area
are.
is different, but it's hundreds of thousands of dollars in some of the 905 areas. It's, it could be anywhere between 20 to $75,000 on downtown condos, right? Depending on the price point, right? There's
But
lots of
like,
different areas.
I'll see a chart or a report going around Twitter saying, like Bancroft is down 38% and Durham is 29% and Richmond Hill is down 32%. But then RBC comes out with a report saying that, maybe prices are going to be down 13%
That's
by the
Canada
end of.
wide. Yeah, that's Canada wide.
Yeah,
So
but
just know that there's any of those national reports are going to be much more tame than what we're going to see here in the GTA. But regardless, the market is still alive. So whether prices continue to fall or they mellow out and they plateau and then they rise again in a couple of years when interest rates change again, nobody knows. And anybody telling you that they know should not be listened to right off the bat. Either they're a realtor, a lawyer, a banker, or on YouTube. Nobody knows what the market is going to do. If we did, we would all be very wealthy and we wouldn't be sharing that information with anybody else. Okay. So the main thing is you have to just look at the facts, look at what why are you buying? Why are you selling? Where are you going? What do you want to do? Try to keep as many of those controllables heading in the direction that's going to help you reach your goal, because I'm not seeing a market that is catastrophic. I'm seeing a very
no, but I
competitive
think
market in certain price points, and even in the luxury stuff. I got competition on luxury properties. I got people who want to buy luxury real estate. I got people who are, not financially, unstable, and that they're more than able to pay these interest rates and to do whatever it needs to do because they have actual needs for buying and selling real estate.
But are people that bought 2 years ago, 2.5 years ago at still elevated prices at a super low interest rate that were locked in for 2 or 3 years that are now up for renewal? Those people must be freaking out. You got $1 million mortgage, you had it at 1% for 3 years, and now all of a sudden it's at 5.25.
But let's just do the math on what you just said there. If you bought 3 years ago, 4 years ago, 5 years ago, because your mortgage renewal has to be coming up now, and a lot of people do 5-year fixed. Let's just say that's the case.
Well, but let's do a 2 year, because a lot of self-employed people got stuck going into 2 year mortgages.
Very few people got 2-year mortgages.
Okay, 3 year mortgages are fairly
whatever you want to
common.
do, 2 or 3 years, it doesn't matter. Just do the simple math.
I know you're going to add on 80% of appreciation first.
Well, yeah, like what you paid 2 or 3 years ago, you paid a price that does not exist today.
It's about to.
It
seems like it's about to.
It potentially could. And so you may end up having, an appraisal come in when you go to refinance at the same price that you bought at. And the only amount of equity that you can pull out is the amount of principal that you paid down over the last 3 years. Your payments will be much higher because now the interest rates are going to go up, but you might be able to free up some equity to be able to weather the storm, pay off all those other high interest debts that you built up and that kind of stuff. Like, you have options. So that's why there's very few people who, unless they refinanced their house at like in February, right? And they blew all that money on something else already, And now they're going, oh my gosh, what am I going to do? Because
They put it into
the amount of money I
Bitcoin.
owe is now what my house is worth, because I refinanced it at 1.5. It's now worth 1.1. And I got a mortgage of 1.150.
Can you imagine being someone who pulled out money from their house during all this to buy Bitcoin, and then Bitcoin just got crushed and their house is coming down, and it's like, what a disaster.
There's
Anyways,
lots of people who sold real estate to buy crypto.
to buy crypto and just got
Right?
pummeled.
They
Oh,
leveraged on crypto. And the good news about the crypto crash is that it's going to show us like what works and what doesn't work in a really clear way. Like that's what I think, even that's what real estate needs right now. I was
going to say, yeah, but we don't learn in real estate. We
need a big wake up call that, going and taking a HELOC on your principal residence to put it down for a 20% pre-construction condo is a stupid move. Like, people need to know that, because there's been
stupid
people
move
selling them that for the last few years.
In a down market, it's stupid. But a lot of people were walking around in their Bentleys with their Rolexes going, I'm flipping assignments, baby. I'm a genius, baby. Check it out, baby. I'll teach you how to do it, baby. No money down, baby.
And that's trouble. That is trouble.
Oh my God. Welcome to the world of TikTok. Okay, listen, we have our guests raring and ready to go. Hopefully we're going to learn something today, TK. This episode is brought to you by Landlord.
This Landlord software is a game changer. You upload your properties, right? You'll upload all the information, income, expenses, timelines, mortgage details, everything that you need to have so that you keep track of everything in your portfolio. And as you go through real-time adjustments in, rent increases and water bills and tax bills and everything else, they're going to actually give you recommendations on how to make your portfolio more efficient. And it just breaks everything down for me in a way that I've never seen before. Like, Excel spreadsheets just don't cut it. I don't think there's a better program or app out there for investors, and it's free.
Please click the link below for your free trial offer.
I'm always learning.
Are you ready?
It's easy to learn when you're so far down the ladder.
That's right. When you're as dumb as we are, it's not hard to be the dumbest guy in the room all the time. I was having a conversation about that the other day with a genius, and this guy felt like he was always the dumbest guy in the room. Hello.
Welcome.
How are you?
Morning.
Good. How are you?
Wow, your background is way better than ours.
Yeah. What's going on?
Hey?
Nice background. Wow.
That's a virtual background though, right? That's not the real deal. That's just
I'm up at Predator Ridge.
Nice.
I see leaves moving.
Okay,
maybe it's real.
Maybe it's real. Thanks for joining us. You're on vacation right now.
Yeah, I'm on. It's like a 3-day come to the family at the cabin, and I stay up the hill at Predator, so I can do things like this without the chaos around me.
Yes.
And work.
Good for you.
Yeah.
Good for you.
And work.
Yeah.
And
You're a busy person.
I am. Yeah.
Let's give you a quick intro. Okay. I'm going to give you a very brief intro here. I'm getting it from your LinkedIn, so I'm hoping that the information's accurate, but I know that it is.
It's relatively up to date.
So MMA is joining us today. Okay. So not only is she a lawyer who was called to the bar in BC and Alberta, but she's also worked in politics, real estate. She's an entrepreneur and also a community advocate. And today she is the most overqualified person to be on this show. Okay. But we appreciate you joining us. Yes, we appreciate you joining us. And, I'd heard a podcast that you've done before, and I reached out to you a while back, and I'm glad you can join us today. And we're going to talk about all sorts of stuff, see what direction it goes in. And we're happy to have you.
My favorite kind.
Yeah, we're happy to have you.
Absolutely. So I think we're the Canadian Real Estate Show. So it'd be great if we could start. I know you have a new venture, and we're definitely going to talk about that because that's super cool. But I don't know if this was your first venture, but you were the founder of Charles Real Estate. Do you want to talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, for sure. Am I on a delay with you guys, or it's all good?
Perfect.
Okay, awesome. I actually got into real estate when I guess I'd been practicing law for about 10 years, and I had 2 little kids. My husband's a corporate finance lawyer. So it was a bit of a chaotic situation around our parts, and I've been doing a whole bunch of community stuff at home. Oh shit, how do I turn that off, guys? Okay. Anyway, whatever, we'll just ignore them. the beeps will go, but hopefully it's Sunday and we
We don't hear it on
get
our
that.
side. Yeah.
I didn't hear.
Oh,
any
you don't?
beeps.
Oh,
No,
you don't?
it's perfect.
Okay, awesome. I got all right. Anyway, so I went into real estate and I thought, here's a place where I could use my legal experience and sort of negotiating skills, and then also my connection to the community. Because I'd grown up in Calgary and I lived in sort of the area that I was in. And I was like, that nerdy mom that was on like the PTA and blah, 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 blah. So I kind of had a good sort of sense of where things were at. And I thought, well, let's do this for a bit because I can have control over my schedule, right? Like in a way that I didn't have when I was practicing law. I mean, yes and no control. We all know as realtors, like you get that, you are at the mercy of the phone call, but it was a little more flexible than sort of trying to crush out billing, endless hours. So I went to a friend's brokerage and that was good. And it wasn't, it was fine. And then I sort of got caught up in this whole sort of, the myth around the myth, I say, but not to trash, but I got caught up and I went to
Trash
Sotheby's.
away.
No, we like trashing realtors here.
Okay. Anyway, it wasn't, but so I was like, okay, let me go to, let's elevate the brand. I seem to be working at, some pretty high level stuff. So let's go to Sotheby's. So I went to Sotheby's and it was, and it was a great setup, but I was like, I'm paying them a lot of money every year. I wasn't there for that long, but I was like, and I'm paying them for signage and brand. And I was operating in Calgary, and in Calgary, you don't necessarily have sort of this, like I could understand it when you're in Vancouver or some, you're selling something on Salt Spring Island and you got people from all over the world looking at your stuff. But the reality is in Calgary, people who live and work in Calgary buy in Calgary. It's a localized real estate network. So I was like, I don't necessarily need this. Like no one from fucking Miami Beach, sorry, I'm sorry, is calling. No one from Miami.
Swear away.
Extra swearing, please.
Yeah, but no one from
don't let me be the only one throwing F-bombs around today.
Okay, so no one's calling me from Miami Beach to find like a place, in Calgary. So I was like, okay.
No,
really doesn't happen. So I was like, maybe if I took all that money that I paid to those guys and started my own brand, that would be cool. And I could combine this idea of a really professional real estate service company in the way that we talk about, when you're practicing law, right? Like it's about, I'm your real estate advisor, right? Like I'm the person that you're coming to make a decision about this enormous financial transaction that you're probably going to do in your life. One of probably the largest for most people. And so why is it that we were not presenting ourselves in the same sort of professional realm that doctors were, that lawyers were, that your financial planner is, or your accountant was? And then how do we pair that with really beautiful, marketing?
So faces on the side of garbage cans. That's
No. In fact, we don't even have faces on cards, right? I was like, what, like, let's really talk, like the level of professionalism that's expected is different, right? And it's about, we need to, people are coming to you and it's about a relationship of trust. And that the best clients are the clients that, phone you because they are there's a couple of realtors in Calgary. There's one I love, Gisela Davis is her name. And I think she's like 80 something now. And the woman still is killing it. A little less so now, but she has serviced generations of families for years and years and years. And they, and the parents put their kids onto her, and then the kids, and then everybody's friends call her. And it's because they trust her. And the level of trust there is just so ingrained in there, because of the service she provides and because of how good she was at her job. And she was sort of this person that I really thought of as like, that's the career that I want. I don't want that flash. If I was, doing it forever, I don't want that flash in the pan career. I want the career that's about, people
longevity.
and people say, call so-and-so, they're going to give you, referrals. They're going to give you, she's going to give you the best advice, and she's going to, not let you do something dumb, or, if you do, it's going to be with all the information that you need at your fingertips. Right.
And it seems like because you're very entrepreneurial, right? Like that is something that I think entrepreneurs do a little bit differently is they don't just follow the directions that everybody else is doing. They kind of look at this and go, this is not working. Like Darryl's very entrepreneurial, one of my most entrepreneurial friends, and every system out there he can find flaws in. And it's like, well, this could be so much better. Why is nobody doing it? Right. And that becomes sort of the hallmark of the new business idea, right? Is like, you know, trying to make sure that we improve whatever has been existent. And my opinion, because I'm in the real estate industry, but I could be wrong because I don't know every other industry, is that the real estate industry is the most resistant to change. Like it's just very, very difficult for anything to really take hold. We've got a couple topics to talk about today that there has been some changes that have taken place recently, but like it's very hard for changes to really take hold that everyone will widely accept. And, you know, all the brokerages will all agree that this is what we should do. This is how we should train people. All the agents will start operating that way. It's like you might get 5% at the most with any new changes that come in.
Yeah, 100%. And it's probably to our detriment.
Yeah, well, 100% it is. Yeah.
Yeah.
There's a big difference between, you know, a lot of people most people will go into a brokerage to work and they'll find all these problems, all these flaws, and they'll think all these things and they won't do anything. Right. They won't do anything. And then there's people
not the entrepreneurs.
Like you who will go and go, hold on a sec, I can do this better. And we forget about all the pain that we are about to put ourselves through for years and misery to get to that vision that we saw years ago, right? So talk about that. I mean, you make it sound like, okay, I was a lawyer and I just started this brokerage and one thing led to another.
A couple kids on the side, no big deal.
And, you know, my husband's a lawyer and nothing's going on around here, and now we're here. So how was the process? Like, what was it easy to start this brokerage? And was it easy to get other people in line with, I mean, it seems to me you have kind of like this white glove, Charles the Butler kind of idea service, right? To help the clientele, which is wonderful branding. I mean, hopefully your branding matches the reality, because a lot of times we find, you know, branding is branding and reality is reality. But you have this vision years ago and nobody else is kind of doing it around you. And you're thinking to yourself, this is really stupid. Like there's a lot of people like me that would really love this service, right?
Yeah.
And so what about from that point to now? Like how long did this take to get really humming? And how long, you know, how painful was it? Was it painful? Are you a superhero?
No. I did it in a way that, I mean, so I had at the time, I was introduced to my former business partner. He's gone off and done some other stuff, but Jeff Jackson, and Jeff had a brokerage already. So he'd sort of done he'd set up a brokerage, but it was like there was like 3 people there, but he was a broker. The infrastructure was there, right? So in terms of like the sort of the, you know, the regulatory components and all of that stuff, we had that covered pretty quickly. And so I went to him and said, look, this is the vision. I think we should sort of rebrand this. I bought into his brokerage. Then we did a deal around that. Had a couple other partners come in as well. And then, you know, it was it was quite frankly like slow to some degree. When I started it, it was like, let's just build this platform for me. Right. Like, I mean, whatever. And we'll see where it goes. Right. And over time, I think we're at like 70 some realtors now. I will say, like, for the past several years, Andy Jackson's been running it. And so he's our current broker and he's the one who's sort of like really boots on the ground now. I mean, like, I've been super focused on the new project for the past couple of years. I still do real estate. I still transact. I did a couple deals last week with my business partners there. But so he's the one who's been sort of carrying that. But we went from you know, and the rebrand, I hired I hired an ad agency, and we really dug into like, what are the core values of what we want to do. And, you know, we also stayed true to the idea that we didn't want everybody, right? Like, I didn't want, you can't be exclusive and be massive at the same time, right? Like, that's not the way it works. So people sort of either are a fit with us or they're not. And that's okay, right? And I think you have to be prepared to say no more than you say yes, right?
You can see why brokers are reluctant to say no, right?
Yeah,
because the traditional
totally.
models, right? The traditional models are just like, collect those desk fees.
Yeah, desk fees,
collect your
ad
broker
fees,
fees,
marketing
just
Yeah.
get bodies in desks and have people working, and you make money as a broker.
Yeah,
Right?
and I mean, one of the things is like all of us and broker, like our brokers and our owners all trade, right? So, and that is something that's a bit different. I think in a lot of places that doesn't happen. So we talk about that with people who come on board, and I think the difference with that is like we are in the game. We're there for our own reputations as well. We're not just there to like feed off other people, right? Like that's not why we're doing this as well. It was like, no, how do we create something that's actually a better platform for ourselves as well? And then when you come in, then you're part of that, right? And you get the benefit of that. And we try to do things really as as sort of this community, and be really, really supportive and be really collaborative with each other as opposed to being competitive. Obviously, there's competitiveness, right? But I'll also say like the Calgary market's been a different market to be able to build something like this in. And we've had a completely different experience than any of you guys have had, right? Like out in Toronto and Vancouver, which from our perspective has been completely disconnected from reality.
How do you feel about that? When
Yeah,
you look?
let's hear the outside perspective.
We were talking about that at the beginning, right? Darryl said,
yeah,
Vancouver people look at Toronto and think like, oh, those guys are this way, and we look at Vancouver. But how does Calgary look at the Vancouver and Toronto market?
just completely disconnected from reality for many years, right? Like it's just been, we went through this period of time, basically like 2014. The oil price tanked, and along with that, the Calgary and the Alberta economy. So you don't go from $70 oil to like $20 oil and not have like a massive impact on everything. And 2014 comes around, and I think at the beginning, and I was still working for Jim Prentice at this time. We saw it coming, right? And so he ran a campaign basically around this whole idea of, this oil price crash is coming. And we were talking to bankers around the world, and they were all like, look, this isn't a V-shaped crash like it used to be. This is a long, we don't see price recovery here anytime soon. And yet it really hadn't hit the public yet. So like the bankers knew, all the people knew who were doing deals, that this was going to be really awful and painful, but that hadn't translated yet into the job loss that you would then see, happening over the course of the next several years, right? And so we went through then this whole period of price discovery, right? Like, so basically in 2015, like the market just seized up and nothing happened, right? Like you'd list stuff and nothing, right? Just silence. And then, you spent sort of really that whole year in this period of like, okay, so what is the price? I don't fucking know. Who's willing to pay what? And then, you slowly sort of say, and then prices obviously came down. People held on to a lot of product. Lots of people walked away from the idea of selling, put things into the rental market, vice versa. And now we're seeing, of course, the inverse of that, right? Which is that all of those houses for that period of time that were basically in the rental market, everybody's like, time to exit, I'm going to sell. And now we have like no rental inventory. But, so
it's such a different perspective. I mean, what was happening here during that time period? Weren't things booming?
That was the beginning of
Yeah.
that was the beginning of the real
Run-up.
acceleration on prices.
Yeah.
2015, it just took off.
Yeah. So you guys then were like, it seemed like 20% year over year, right? Like it was insanity. And
you guys are getting buried alive.
We're
so crazy too. Like you guys are the ones who produce everything, for God's sakes, between right? Like in Alberta and Saskatchewan, literally, if we don't have you guys, we don't produce much here, right? And they like their prices should be going bananas, right? They should have
be the
like
place to
jobs
be,
everywhere. Everybody should be flocking over there, buy a house for $350 in Saskatchewan and work on a farm and have a wonderful life and money left over. But no, everybody comes to Toronto and pays $1.8 billion for a 400 square foot condo.
Yeah, I know. Actually, I think one of my big sort of price shocks was I was walking, I was doing a pop-up with the new business. Sorry, I'm jumping around, but I was walking through the annex, right? And I was like, oh, I wonder how much this is, right? And I was like, $6 million or something for this townhouse. And I just like, my brain was like, it just could not compute it, right? Like I was like, okay, so here that might be like 2.1, right? If that. And I just like, I was like, okay, so I could have my house in Calgary, then I could buy a place like in Maui, and I could have like a flat in London for that.
And a
Like,
pretty nice car, probably.
But you won't have a
too.
townhouse in the annex.
No.
I won't have a townhouse in the annex, right?
And
And I was
that's
like,
that's
and
the
I was
key.
kind of like, and I was like, I mean, so on, on the global perspective, I was like, I just don't get it.
Yeah.
So that's the annex. I mean, that's pretty much downtown Toronto, right? Me and my family, when we need something to do, we'll go for like a nice long drive and we play a game in the car. When we see a for sale sign, it's like, guess how much this is for sale for, right? And we're all shooting out numbers based on absolutely nothing. But there's never been a time where we weren't like, holy shit, like how the hell is this worth that much money? Like we were just in a outskirt, beyond outskirt, me and my wife, and we were walking around, we were on a little vacation, and I was like, who is paying this here? This is insane. But meanwhile, somehow people just keep coming up with the money.
Yeah. And it is about the attitude. So 2014, people in Calgary, right? They took a hit and they took a lot of pain. And so they knew that their business was suffering. They got their job was laid off, or their friends, or you knew somebody who, because the whole like economy is based on those oil prices and gas.
But
so
you've
like,
seen it time and time
you
again,
knew,
right?
Yeah, you knew somebody. And then, that's the other thing too, is
to be
repetitive
weary
of the cycle in Calgary. You're kind of like, all right, like I know where this is going. Where
I mean, the 80s, right? Like I grew up in the 80s in Calgary, and literally in like 86, like, people lost, like, it was like, oh, how many people lost their houses? A ton. Like this was like this was the thing. It was like, oh, so-and-so's in the oil and gas industry, and, like all the geophysicists and stuff like went to nothing, right? And people like handed back. We actually have a thing here, where
you don't even think of those geophysicists and all those kind of jobs too that go with it, right? You just think of miners and like.
Yeah.
Oh no, it's like, it's a very like the engineering jobs, right?
High paying jobs.
High paying jobs, right? And they all handed the keys back. One of the big like sort of entrepreneurial cycles of the Calgary industry, right, is like guys, so you have like this little team of like, you have like a geophysicist and an drilling engineer and there's sort of like 4 or 5 of them, and they come together, a CFO, and they buy some land and they prospect it, and they're like, oh, there's a thing here. They work together to like create they convince somebody to drill it, or they drill it themselves, and then they take the money and they flip it, and then they move on to the next one, right? So this is sort of like the cycle, right? And so guys were just getting hung out on all of these things, right? So it was like they were, that was happening then. This house, this happened again, and this just happened again in 2014. So it is something that we've seen. I think before, though, we've seen these sort of like price spikes, right? It comes up and down really quickly, but this was like one of the longer, more prolonged ones, and the pain associated with it was, really, really deep.
And they're more cautious, right? Because we're on a 30-year bull run right now.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And so, that's why everyone's kind of like, really, like I'm talking to sellers right now, and prices have dropped significantly since 3-4 months ago, and they just can't believe it. They just can't wrap their heads around it. They're saying, no, if I just wait till September, prices will go back even higher. If I just wait till this date, they'll go back, because they're conditioned that prices will only go up. And I believe people in Calgary don't have that conditioning.
But that's been the cycle here. The cycle has been like boom and then fly back to the moon.
Yeah. And I mean, on some, for some perspective, like I articled in Vancouver, my husband's originally from Vancouver, and so like for that time we're also like, oh man, if we'd like bought a house in Vancouver, imagine where we would be now, right? Like and we kept saying, how can these prices sustain themselves? I don't get it, but it kept going. And I'm like, and it's funny because even like we were watching over the years, even like at the law firm, like it's like guys were getting paid more in Calgary. So not only were you getting like, not only are the incomes higher, but like the cost of living is like so much less.
Yeah.
It was just a really hard thing to, wrap your minds around. And I'm like, I love Vancouver. I think it's really awesome. But like, in the winter, it's not LA. Like, let's be real about that.
It's totally psychological. Like there's no like fundamentals that support.
I don't
right?
understand.
I'd get it, right? Like if Vancouver or Toronto's incomes were all that much higher, then it's like, okay, like no problem. Like, property taxes lower, like whatever.
Yeah.
All those things would account to having the justification behind these prices, but it doesn't. There's no equation where it makes sense that living in Toronto is going to be a better decision for you and your family, other than you think it's cool.
Yeah, and I mean, to be fair too, right? Like when the oil patch, like Calgary hadn't done a really good job of reinventing itself too, right? Like, I mean, I've always sort of been at this mindset that, look, climate change is real. There is pressure to do things differently. So while we still need, the world may not want oil and gas, but the world still needs
Never
oil
gonna
and
change,
gas,
yeah.
right? And so we will, I think we will get to the point where we're way better at managing carbon emissions. I think we're going to get to the point that we probably do have way more renewable resources, and Calgary really should be the center of that for this entire country, right? And I think, and we are actually now building ourselves up to that, right? Like there's incredible programs here. Like a friend of mine, Kevin Krauser, is running this program called Avatar Innovations, and they have actually done a deal with like Suncor, CNRL, Shell, Synovus, like all the big guys, and they pull teams of engineers out of there. So there's these young engineers who have ideas about how to like do carbon emission reduction stuff, and they pull these teams out and incubate them at Avatar. And then those engineers actually can own the IP of what they develop, and the big guys then have the option to like finance it once it works out, right? And so so this guy's now running like 30 teams of engineers who are working right now on like how do you reduce like the emissions process in the extraction, like from all of it, the entire thing.
Innovative, yeah.
So
that's a new industry, right? Like it's
totally new industry.
Yeah.
So we can do both. We can walk and chew gum at the same time, right? Like
right.
that is what
screw it up and fix it simultaneously.
Yeah, I mean, this is like the, we're going over there and begging like Saudi to pump more oil, and I mean, they just said, I think it was like, I read something yesterday that they are literally they've just now said that they can produce, I think, a max, like they've hit their maximum of what their actual export or what their actual drilling capacity is, and I think it's a lot less than what people thought it was long term.
Why don't we just drill or build some refineries in Alberta? Like, why don't we just refine it?
They take a long time.
The tar sands
right?
ones are really expensive, and we don't.
Yeah, I mean, this is the problem with this stuff, right? Is like all of this stuff takes 10 to 15 years to build out, and then there's this argument of like, well, in 10 to 15 years, what is the
could have done it already with that kind of a time frame.
Yeah, but we have to look forward, right? So it's kind of like,
here's
the pipeline stuff is a difficult one to wrap your mind around, though, because Eastern Canada still imports a ton of oil from overseas, and we're like, can't get Alberta oil to it. Now it's also different kinds of oil, right? Like the tar sands oil is not light crude, right? So it's we do produce some of that, but not in the same way. So the tar sands oil is the stuff that it's heavy oil. It produces steel. It produces, it's the stuff that runs like shipping tankers and things like that, right? So there's and the only other competitors really are like Venezuela in that space. So we do have it.
Venezuela,
yeah, exactly.
Whatever.
So we do have it.
You could buy all their oil for like $80.
It's not like we're necessarily gonna, we can't replace Saudi oil, right? Like that's not going to happen necessarily overnight. But the fact that we still can't get it to the Eastern, Canada without putting it on a train is ridiculous.
My question to you is this, because you worked with provincial politics as well. How does the federal government favor the rest of Canada compared to Alberta? Like, how do Albertans look at,
I'm in this weird place right now.
Right there.
Like politically, I'm kind of this homeless creature, right? Like
it's called a realist.
There's a lot of stuff that I lean liberal on, right? Like, I mean, I think their childcare policy is genius. And I think it's actually what could be framed as a real conservative policy, right? Like it saved families like thousands of dollars across this country, and it's going to get women back into the workplace in a way that other stuff hasn't. So on a lot of stuff, I'm like, yes, go. I think, climate change is real. We've got to figure out a way to deal with that. I wish the conservatives would get on with a pricing strategy, like a carbon tax strategy. I think conservatives need to get out of their own way to some degree. Like, climate change is a problem and the world is concerned about it. Like, and we have to not pretend like somehow it's not, or be like a denier in that. I mean, there's the political reality of it is that, Europe still needs oil and they're getting it from Russia. So we
Secretly.
So
Underground
secretly, we
railroad
do.
of-
Just
of
the
oil.
three of us know. Only the three of us know.
Yeah, right. So I mean, I feel like there's this. I'm disappointed that it just goes to the extremes right away, right? And it's so easy for people to sort of like rile everybody up about stuff, and it's and it's just like, I mean, Danielle Smith is running for leader of the UCP in Alberta right now, and she's like on some whack job doctor show saying that you can control cancer, right? And that it's really just your fault if you get it. And it's like, Jesus Christ, people, like this is not helpful to our political discourse, right? So yeah, but yeah, definitely, like, it's been a hard time. And the buying into how do you get pipelines built in this era, right? I mean, I think actually now companies like Enbridge and stuff are stepping up, and they're doing the things that they need to do in terms of like actually building partnerships with Indigenous communities across this country, like real partnerships, economic partnerships. There was a deal that my husband worked on a couple of years ago where the Fort Mackay First Nation actually became a real economic partner in the East Tank Farm deal with Suncor, which means that they actually they didn't get given anything. They had a bond offering that was done through like Royal Bank of Canada, and they brought it together, and they are now like actual owners and participating in the entire process. So, and you're going to have, on the Indigenous relations issue, there is no homogenous answer that fits everybody, right? The different bands have they are different nations, and they have different perspectives on how this is going to roll. And it's incumbent on industry now to figure out how to work with those bands as though they are individual nations, and treat them as such. It's like, yeah, this is your new negotiating partner.
And so that's a big tool. So I guess that would bring more resources. So on a federal level or private side, whatever it is, to be able to actually get these pipelines, because you've mentioned them a few times, these pipelines are a big answer to bring stability to Alberta.
Yeah, I mean, I think we probably got quite a bit of pipeline capacity. Like, I was disappointed that, Kenny came in and Rachel had bought, or Notley had bought, she'd done a deal to like secure a whole bunch of train rails because we couldn't get, that's a funny thing. Like, Alberta NDP are actually very pro jobs, which means you're not, I wouldn't say you're pro oil, but you're oil realist, right? And so she'd actually done this deal to secure a whole bunch of like train capacity and rail capacity, because if you don't have pipelines, guess how oil gets to market? It gets on a train, right? And so, and then he canceled that, I think that he could like get Keystone or a bunch of these other things through, but those are also subject to, not just our decisions here, right? Like, there's nothing we can do to control Biden, choosing whether or not to go ahead with Keystone. And quite frankly, like, even if Biden had said he wants to go ahead with it, I think it would probably get caught up in the US court system for a long time anyway, because the anti-pipeline lobby is not just somehow strong in Canada, it is equally as strong in the US. And we're seeing that with like Line 5 and with Keystone and all of these other things, right? So this isn't somehow this like uniquely Canadian issue, right? Much like inflation, this is not some uniquely Canadian issue. These are global issues, and how we deal with them, they're fucking hard, right? These are hard problems to get through, and there is no magic solution, right? Like, I mean,
it seems like they don't work on them hard enough. It seems like these issues get buried really quickly. They get brought up around elections. Like, what would be 25% of the amount of oil that the Maritimes are buying from Saudi Arabia? Like, if we could just drive some revenue into Alberta from one of these pipelines, like, I'm sure it would be a massive, I'm sure it's like billions of dollars.
Oh yeah.
Right.
Huge. Yeah.
It's
no,
like,
it would be,
why is this not a priority? Right. Like, it doesn't, I don't
it is
feel
a
like
priority,
it is.
but then you have to go through, like, we have now, obviously, changes to the regulatory regime that the Liberal Party brought in terms of like, I think it was Bill C-69. I might be getting my bills mixed up. There was one that was like, anyway, but this was about, changing the environmental assessment process and how you went through that. And there was huge pushback in Alberta about it. And people like Martha Hall Finley, who was a Liberal, ran for Liberals, now is a senior leader at Suncor, is like, no, there's better ways that we can go about doing this, guys. And this is punitive to Alberta. So, yeah, we do get caught up in this thing. Like, climate change is a great thing for people to run on. It sounds really easy as a problem to fix. We're just going to shut down oil. We now see that that is not a political reality in the short term. Short term being 10 to 30 years, right?
So long-term oil production as a platform is not a very good political strategy.
No, it's not.
Yeah.
Like, let's be real.
Yeah, that makes sense. Okay, that
not in
trying to wrap my head around
Calgary
it.
for sure. Not in Alberta.
Well, yeah, but
on any federal level either, right? So it's away from the climate change.
Yeah, and there's nothing like, climate change is real. This stuff is happening. The impacts of it are being felt. So, but the problem is we are inherently selfish human beings. Like, humans are selfish. We are not going to somehow, when you give us something, we're not going to say, oh, I don't want to fly anymore. You know what? Because of climate change, or I'm not going to drive, or I'm not going to, we will, if you give us ways to make that decision that doesn't take something away from our quality of life, then we will do it. Mm-hmm. And so that's why it's incumbent on us to invest in the technological side of this. This is like I truly believe that the answer to this is human ingenuity, right? The answer to this is not that we just that we shut down modern life, which actually in many ways has like made life infinitely better for billions of people across this planet, right? Like energy, like access to energy is the best thing on the face of the planet. It's made everything better. You want an incubator for your baby when they get sick, you need energy, right? So energy is
and clean energy is like 10% of our total needs. Like, it's never going to happen. Yeah.
I wouldn't say it's never going to happen. I think actually it probably can happen. I think
100% though from non-renewable resources.
I think what will happen is we'll end up with stuff like, there's this really cool technology now where you can extract. It's almost like a photosynthesis strategy where you can actually extract CO2 emissions from the atmosphere and create starches and plastics out of it. Right. Okay. And so I mean, when you take things like that,
I saw that it's like a big dream catcher or something, right?
Yeah.
So as opposed to stopping CO2, how to utilize CO2 after
turn it into bricks. It's crazy.
Exactly. So how do we do things like, make the carbon internal combustion engine better, or move to, moving more to sort of electrical, which is run off of like hydro. I mean, let's be real. The energy infrastructure in much of Canada is very clean energy already, right? Like hydro, wind power, like a ton of this stuff is actually already operational. Alberta's moving a ton to wind. We've shut down a whole bunch of coal producing stuff. So these moves are as
is that why we're getting the carbon tax credit? Everyone's getting that family rebate.
Yeah. So those and things like price on carbon does work, right? Like, I would like to see that stay in place, and then have, and then really have that money go towards like targeted stuff in terms of like the research and the innovation that we need to actually solve this problem, because that's what's going to solve this problem is innovation.
Mm-hmm. I like it. So you think taxing then carbon tax on individuals, like on our gas and all that kind of stuff, or do you think on the corporate side?
Well, I think both. I mean, it is on both, right? Yeah. And so I think on the individual,
people don't like the carbon on the individual side.
Yeah, but if you build it in, like, most people get a rebate, right? Like 80 to 90% of Canadians will get a rebate on that. So it's actually not when you actually look at it, like Preston Manning was one of the guys who was like originally for the carbon tax, right? Like, this is a solution that was proposed by Republicans in the US. Like, so the price on carbon is actually a very market-driven, theoretically conservative solution if you structure it properly, right? So I think that's one of my frustrations around this is like, there's lots of great ideas, but we get caught up in the sort of partisanship around this stuff.
Yeah, why can't we just vote on the actual ideas rather than the political side that the person represents. Like, why can't it just be a Twitter poll?
Right?
Yeah, I know. Well, I mean,
Right?
that's,
Like an
that's the
Amber
thing,
Alert on
like,
your phone,
you know,
just yes or
like,
no.
here, everybody, we're voting on this now. Put in your vote.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I think also most, a lot of people are not informed voters, right? And that's another big part of it,
But
right?
there's
We can't
now.
leave
But there's
we can't leave
YouTube
these
and
major
TikTok.
decisions in the hand of the public, Darryl.
I
Well,
feel
it's terrible.
These
It's
are major
terrible to
decisions.
say, but
Build a
yeah.
pipeline, send it across the whole country.
Let me
Yeah.
ask you a
Cares who it
question,
interferes with.
TK. I feel like, and I could be wrong. Like in Toronto, me and my wife will go for dinner or we'll go out with friends and we'll be sitting in a restaurant, and it takes like maybe 3 minutes for one of the tables on either side of us to talk about real estate. But I feel like in Calgary, like, do you guys talk about oil and energy more than real estate? If you're sitting in a restaurant, is it like 2 seconds before they're talking about the new well opening up, or the
new
guy that just went
geophysicist
bankrupt
that they just hired over at the plant? Yeah.
1,000%.
What's bigger there?
Like,
Is it energy is a much bigger conversation? Because most of the stuff you're talking about is like way out of my realm of, forget about expertise, like interests. Like in Toronto, if we're not talking about no, it's all important and it all matters.
We brought you on for these reasons. Yeah.
No. I'm just saying, like, every conversation here in Toronto is real estate, like, or tech about real estate, or something about real estate, or a bond yield in relation to interest rates, and like unemployment that relates to real estate. But you guys, it's like, it's all energy driven. The real estate market is like a derivative of the energy market for you, where here it's like, is there anything else going on in Toronto?
Well, I mean, that's one of the big things, right? Is that like the real estate market has actually been like, a huge component of our federal GDP. And it's kind of like, what does it do? It's transactional. Like, is it accretive, right? Like, is it bringing in, like you said, right? Like the production of things, right? And so, yeah, you're right. We talk about totally different things here. Like, of course, everybody talk, like when you're a real,
it's just fascinating.
How's the market? Like, if you don't have an answer to how's the market, you're screwed. But in Alberta, the answer to how's the market is what's happening.
See oil prices.
It's what's happening in the energy markets, right? And what's the what's the macro perspective on all of that, right? That's what drives.
So you watch price per barrel and you're like, either like,
yeah.
or like, oh, good, it's going to be a couple of good months now.
Yeah, totally. Right. Like,
really?
it's all about what's the oil price at, what's natural gas at. And then the other component of that, right, is that when the oil price and the natural gas price are high, the Alberta Treasury booms, because we get, like, I think we're in line for some, almost like they're projecting like between something like, 10 or 15 and $20 billion. Right. And to put that in perspective, the income tax income into the Alberta Treasury is $11 billion.
Wow. What about the provincial debt in Alberta?
I don't know what it is right now. It's not
compared to other provinces.
It's nowhere near. Obviously,
like Ontario, we were just like,
the problem is though, is that we finance everything based on royalties, right? So government has for years and years and years been like, oh, well, we've got like, it's a slush fund, right? So everybody's been, and this is what sort of my former boss was talking about when he said, look in the mirror. It was like, well, we didn't need to have a PST because we had royalty income. We could have low taxes because we had royalty income. Albertans still expected the same or more luxury level of services from their government, right? So it wasn't like we were somehow financially brilliant or austere. It was just that, like, we were living off daddy's oil trust fund for a long time that supplemented our income, right? And then, of course, when you go through these routes and that dries up, you're fucked. And then, in many senses, like, Notley kind of came in at the time when, she became the face of the recession through, quite frankly, what was no fault of her own, because it was just, all of a sudden there wasn't this income there.
Why isn't Calgary like Dubai? Like, why isn't it just crazy riches and oil people everywhere?
Right? I
No,
think
but
it is
I'm
just
serious. Like,
it's
why
not
is
doesn't last
Calgary?
very long. It's
No,
like
but if you live in Calgary, you're like, we're getting fucked here by the government. You guys in Toronto and BC are getting all this and all that. You guys do nothing. We do all the heavy lifting, right? And we get nothing out of it. We got to produce our own funds. We got our own slush fund that's running out now. We need funds over here. We're driving this thing, guys. But how come it's not like that here? How come there aren't princes walking around with their, with their Rolls Royces,
slammed out Ford
F-150, diamond crested Rollses?
I'm a giant fan of like of city states, because I'm also kind of like, we shove all this money into like, it's like, oh God. So that, the cities do really power, the cities do power Alberta. Like Calgary is a center of excellence when things are humming. And I think Calgary's finally getting its mind around, in many ways, I don't want to say it's PR because it's both. But when the world doesn't want what you're selling it, you've got to figure out a way to talk about it better. And there's also been this sort of sense of entitlement in Calgary and in the oil and gas industry, which is, we don't need to do anything differently because the world just needs our oil. And then, climate change initiatives come along, people are pushing back, and people are saying, like, I would say a lot of young people who live in urban centers, especially across Canada, are like, no, we don't want oil. We don't want your dirty oil, while they're on their phone and getting clean energy and driving and flying and, enjoying all the benefits of that. And so we haven't done a good job of reconciling and talking about the challenges that all of these things sort of present, right? And that the fact of the matter is that you don't just shut things down overnight. And also, we haven't set ourselves up in a way to talk about how all the incredible stuff that is happening on the ground in Calgary, about how we are actually part of the solution, right? And for a long time, I don't think we were necessarily part of the solution, but I think the past 4 years have really set up innovation centers and structures within, our industry here to be like at the forefront of what's happening in terms of like clean energy and clean technology and carbon emissions, right? So not shutting down, but like, okay, so how do we get this oil out of the ground in a cleaner way, right? How do we then take this stuff and actually, like, because oil sands, like, you can actually make carbon fiber out of the emissions that come out of like some of the, so what are we doing with this to create new industries here? Right. And that's the innovation, because I think we did, while we're entrepreneurial, you got lazy, right? Like, you pump some oil, you get paid, and then shit happens, the world changes, nobody wants it. So how do we actually then say, okay, well, how do we become part of this and actually truly become part of the solution? And that's where I think the magic, that's the other thing is, we all wait for, entrepreneurs, and you'll notice it, like, we don't wait for government to solve the problem. Like, a bit like with my new project, people are like, oh, isn't there a whole bunch of money for like, female entrepreneurs and this and that? And I'm just like, I'm not fucking sitting around filling out like years and years of forms to get some grants. Like, fuck you. You know how I'm getting income? I'm going to sell shit.
Yeah. Maybe produce something somebody wants.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Right. Like, so, it's also incumbent on us to, smell what's happening in the world and get in front of it, right? Like, you can't just wait for government to, like, can they get in your way and overly regulate you and all of this kind of stuff? Yes. On the flip side, you have to lobby and work towards making better changes in that sense, but you also have to then get out of your own way, right? Like, get out of your own way and
actually have the systems in place to facilitate those changes. In my head, I was thinking about these PR like messages about like, Alberta oil, like trying to make it sound nice, but the answer is not the PR side. It's about actually making it more sustainable and actually providing solutions to the actual problems that exist, and the PR will take care of itself.
Yeah. Right? And I mean, some of the PR has been really shitty. Like, people are like, we have the cleanest energy in the world. And it's like, dude, we actually don't.
It's easy to
right?
say.
Like, so
I think crap.
Yeah, like, I think when you actually look at like Norway and the emissions that, like, how much emissions come out of sort of some of what they're producing, it's a different product, right? it was easier, like it's deep offshore drilling. It's a different product than like mining, but we've got to do better. So, I mean, they should really just be saying, this is how much carbon emission, this is how much went into it before, this is where we're at now.
We're going to
and
get
this
it
is
down.
our goal. And we're going to get, and we're getting it down. And we are doing all those things, but you can't, but just saying we have the cleanest, like that's just bullshit. So don't say bullshit.
We charged you 2% and now there's less of it.
Yeah. Right. So just, so we've got to be more transparent, and we've got to stop the, you know, the BS rhetoric. Are we the most, you know, ethical? Like, I hate that, because like all these guys wrote this book and it didn't work. And it's like, if you go down that road, but yeah, I mean, it's better to buy Canadian oil than it is to buy Saudi oil. Let's be real about that. Or Venezuelan oil. Like we have, you know, yes, it's just better.
My thoughts are on this, and I'm super like naive to this, but my thoughts is every other major oil producer in the world it's like a national pride. It's like a national mandate for them to be able to be in that position as a, you know, resource provider, where here we're like, Alberta will take care of it and we'll do everything else on our own. I feel like the federal government isn't as involved in what they should be involved in as they could be. That's my perspective.
Yeah. And it's funny because actually Jean Chrétien brought in, you know, he was one of, like, these were partners in the original oil sands projects, right? So it wasn't even like, at the time, it was like actually a big liberal initiative, which people don't know, which is kind of funny. And then, you know, to be fair to the Trudeau government, they did get KXL done, right? So the twinning of, or not KXL, sorry, TransCanada, TMX. So, you know, the feds came in. People will say that they created an unhealthy market environment, so they had to come in. Nonetheless, they came in, they bought the project. It is getting twinned. Kinder Morgan pipeline is now going to be twinned all the way out to, you know, to BC, and that was a necessity. And they did step in and they did get that done. So I will give.
Okay, good.
What is twinned?
So it meant that the pipeline was already in existence, right? So basically, they just added
beside it.
Yeah. So it was the pipeline's already there. So it's an easy one for them to come on board with, right? Because you're not doing anything new. You're not, like, it's already there.
You're ruining the same land.
Yeah. Yeah.
You're not ruining anything new. It's right
there.
Well,
and quite frankly, it's underground. You don't even know about it. And pipelines are now by far the safest, cleanest way to transport the product. Otherwise you're on rail, and no one wants that.
Yeah. We need more ocean.
Anyway, this is very like oil and gas focused.
This is very oil and gas focused.
I love it. Yeah, this is great.
Yeah, it's hilarious because I'm not even in the, you know, I'm not even in the industry. But
we need to get to your newest product because we're out of time. So why don't we talk quickly about your newest venture? What you want to tell us about that? Yeah, Sophie Grace.
my clothing line, which is kind of fun. I mean, I'm sitting here in like a t-shirt, but anyway, I spent 10 years as a lawyer, and then have worked sort of in the upper echelons, right? Like in professional services areas, and getting dressed as a woman was always a giant pain in the ass to look professional in a way that it wasn't for men, right? Like my husband would get up and throw on his suit and he's out the door, right? It was like Barack Obama had the, he had the white suit and the Prada, or the white shirt and the Prada suit. They said, just don't change it. It was after the tan suit incident. And it was like, and there's this whole decision fatigue that goes into getting dressed in the morning, right? Or when people are looking at you and deciding. And when women are always looked at in a way that is different than the way men show up. And so there's this assumption sort of out there that all women are stylists and know how to like put themselves together and look really put together and professional all the time. And I was like, that's not the case. So why don't we create something that's about giving women really beautiful, comfortable, easy to style clothes. So it's a bit of a modularity concept. So what we do is we make really beautiful mix and match separates that then go all together. So you buy, you know, once you get the blazer, then like all of my pants and skirts will kind of match and pair with it. We'll give you blouses that go with it. But I'm still very focused on creating beautiful, incredibly comfortable product. So kind of had this idea in my closet one day when I had to go to a board meeting, and I was like, why does nobody do this and this? And then I was like, oh, we'll just do it. So I found someone who she was a mom actually, and this kind of comes into sort of my, why I love this sort of federal childcare policy and these kinds of things, who had been working at Lulu and the Gap, and she was a product developer. And, she had 2 young kids and went and couldn't do the kind of crazy hours that she needed to do with her husband still working. And she decided to start her own consulting agency. I hired her, and then she and I, traveled down to LA. We sourced fabrics. We created designs. She and I worked with a designer. That didn't work out. Then we redeveloped the designs, and we created this, and then found a manufacturer. And she's really helped me develop this entire project. And I've been sort of like creative direction, financing, building it up. And it was interesting because she now gets to do something really fucking cool and still gets to work kind of part-time. Like, so we developed it with like her kids playing in the background, right? And like, she's sick and she has to go, or the kids are sick, she has to go pick them up at 3 p.m, blah, blah, blah. But so often you get put on this sort of mommy track, right? And you don't get to do cool shit. You're like, oh, you're part-time, you're whatever. And what's great is now, like, she's the head of product at a new startup, and we're double, 2xing revenue every year over year right now. Awesome. Even though I launched a fucking workwear collection during a pandemic. So that was it.
Yeah. The timing could have been better, but
the timing could have been better. Yeah.
That's the best time, because it's so hard that when it's over, it's like, whoa, this is easy now. Look what I built.
Like people are going to work wearing clothes
like
again.
24 boxes showed up on my doorstep February 23rd, 2020. Right. And I was running it out of my basement. And
nice. Love it. So you must
resilience.
be like me. Like you walk around the house and you're like starting businesses on the way to the kitchen, right? It's like,
I know. A part of me is like, I really want to have like a whole, like, I need like a little team that I can like be like, you know what we're gonna do now?
We're gonna do this now. You know what you need with the team? Like this, like money printing press, right? Like
I know.
Like the Bank of Canada.
Yeah.
Well, listen, it was wonderful to have met you. You are unbelievably informative and interesting. And entertaining as well. So thank you so much for your time. Really appreciate it. It's great to meet you. We will we'll put a bunch of links down below for everything that Emma is working on currently.
Yeah. Little shameless plug though. So how can people order your clothing?
Oh,
we have a lot of female listeners too.
Yeah, sophiegrace.ca. Yeah.
So direct to consumer.
So it's a direct to consumer. We just launched our silk collection. It's absolutely stunning. We do a lot of, there it is. So, and everything is meant to, look phenomenal and feel unbelievable on your body. So that's what we're up to. And it's, it's going really well. Lawyers are some of our biggest fans, as you can probably tell. But lots of cool shit coming down the pipe too here with this.
Very impressive. Awesome. Very impressive. Wonderful to meet you.
I learned a lot
today. Thank you so much. I learned a hell of a lot. Holy cow. It's so amazing how in the same country, it's like there's different countries, right? Like it's so different. It's crazy. And the perspective is like insane. Like I guarantee you, if you lived here in Toronto, you wouldn't be talking about any of that oil stuff. And I guarantee you, if I was in Alberta, I'd probably be talking all this oil stuff all day.
Right? Totally.
Like
and you have to learn what your market's about, right? I mean, and the one thing I will say is like, I don't envy you guys right now, because we've been through, as a realtor, I've been through the downturns, right? And what will happen is there'll be a lot of people who leave the industry, right? But if you are an honest
we only
broker,
have 70,000 realtors here, so that.
But I mean, if you're someone who's in it for the long haul, if you are honest and straightforward and transparent, and you don't make predictions, like we never make predictions. I'm like, I don't know what's going to happen. What I can do is I can give you all the information, and we can have a really intelligent discussion together about what the best decision is for you right now. And I'm not going to ever tell somebody they're going to make money on a project or they're going to lose money on a project. That's not who knows? None of us
my
ever know.
job. That's my job. That's why I love not being a realtor, because I can state an opinion and it doesn't affect me, and I can try and convince people that they're going to make money on my projects.
Yeah, it's a totally different
perspective.
Right? Yeah, but totally I mean, the way to be a great realtor, in my opinion, is to build those relationships out of trust. And we are, and the more information that gets into the market, the better. The more informed my consumer is, the better. Because my job is to be a guide and not hide information from them, but to like really work with them on what is the best situation for them and their personal circumstances, and then what the market's doing, and pair those things together.
I'm glad you went there, because I had a couple of real estate questions for you written down here.
Sure.
But this is I had two. But that's a perfect segue into this question. So you have like this higher end boutique-y white glove kind of service that you're providing, and you're in a part of the country where, you see some pretty bad bus cycles that last a long time. And then, we've got all these other things going on in the world right now, and it's a scary time, especially I would imagine in Calgary, but prices are going up. How morally can you be as a realtor in this environment selling people product when and I know everybody's situation is different and blah, 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 but like there's this overall fear out there. Like, how do you, and I ask this to everybody, like, how do you navigate that conversation with the clients? And morally, when you're like, fuck, man, this thing is falling apart. This is bad news. And then it's like, let's go make the offer on that chalet up on the lake right now.
So hang on, lost an earplug. I actually don't think it's that difficult, because can you hear me? Did that disconnect? Or okay? Okay. Yeah. Sorry. When people are buying a home, it's like, look, you've told me that you want to enter into the market and that you want to transact on a property, and so I'm here to help you do that, or I'm here to sell, or I'm here to sell and market a property into whatever circumstances exist. The circumstances are irrelevant to what my job is. My job is to make sure that I provide the right information, that I market the property as best that I can compared to everything else that is on the market, right? So we don't have control over the market. What we do have control over is what our clients' intentions are, what their circumstances, we don't have control of their circumstances. We have control over what information we give to them based on that, right? And then it's like, look, in Calgary, it's been not about this investment property vehicle, right? And I think that's sort of been a bit of the difference. It's about, do you want to live here? This is a home. We're helping people buy and sell homes mostly, right? Most people who transact are not investors, are not speculators, right? So if you're in a speculation business, like, then that's your business, and you better inform yourself as to what that is. And you're taking the risk, whatever that risk happens to be. Just like if I'm a banker and there's an entrepreneur and they want to take out a loan to do some crazy thing, that's not my problem, man. I'm going to give you the right. So I'm not saying but my job is to inform you the best I can and provide you as much information and perspective as I can. And then you make the decision about, what, I want to live in this house because this gives me control over my life. I'm not going to be subjected to like being out there as a renter. I'm going to own this property. I know what schools my kids are going to go to. I know what my community is. I will have control over my living environment. And this is where I plan to build my home and my life. And so then it's like, look, if you want to buy this right now, this is what it's going to take. This is what the market condition is for you to transact on that property. But I'm not going to tell you whether or not 5 years from now, that's going to be a good deal. You're going to have to make that assessment on your own about whether or not that's going to be a good financial transaction from you. But from a life perspective, this might be a very good transaction for you. Maybe it is worth to you what, the cost of potentially that going down because you've got your kids into the school that you want, or you're living in the neighborhood that you want, or you've got a commute that works for you, or all of these like life conditions that come along with that. And I think that's what's been the disconnect in the Vancouver and Toronto market, is that it's been this sort of speculative thing where everybody's been thinking about it as this asset investment vehicle, as opposed to you're buying a home.
Maybe we should have it here where it's like, everybody seems, I imagine most realtors want somebody to have a pre-approval before they work with them here. But maybe we should also have some kind of a sign off from a financial planner or an asset manager where it's like, yes, they can get the mortgage. Maybe they shouldn't buy a house for 1.2. Like, I think it's in their best interest to stay within this range based on their circumstances. And then that package goes to a realtor and it's like, okay, Like these guys can actually do this deal. They can afford this deal. They're not going to be in trouble if the market goes down 15% or rates go up 4%. I don't know. I guess it's not so relevant in Calgary, but maybe we
It's,
need.
yeah, it really isn't, right? And you didn't have that sort of hype where people needed to make a decision in a moment. And people were like, you're going to lose this. And you have all of the emotionality that then comes along with these things. And it's very, very difficult. And I'm not going to cast blame. It's very, very difficult. Like, I actually think hot markets are way harder to operate in than the cooler markets, right? Like, we have to work harder in a cold market. Like, you have to work your ass off, and you really don't have as much competition. And only the best survive, right? You can be a chump and survive it, but it's difficult to do the right thing always for your clients, I think, in the hot market, or to feel like somehow maybe your client was best served, or maybe they get the best of them and they're in this heated space and they pull the trigger on something and you're like, maybe if we'd had more time, or there was less pressure around this for us to think about it more, it would have been helpful. So, I mean, I don't think that the circumstances lead to that, but you try. And I think from a realtor, being the best realtor you can be, it's about like that idea of just grounding yourself in how you choose to do business all the time, right? And even saying to your clients, and doing it in writing, like, this is what it takes to buy this house right now. I do not know if this is going to be a financial transaction that will be to your benefit in the long run, right? Like, but this is what, and I will make no predictions on that. And interest rates could go up and you could get fucked, or whatever it is. But if you want to buy right now, let's do it. And if you're on the sell side, right, it's like, look, this is the better of the stuff that's out there on the market. This is the best stuff to buy. And if people are coming to you and telling you that they want to transact, I mean, I don't know. Do you guys still do dual agency there? Like, can you represent both sides of the deal?
You can.
Yeah. See, I think that's actually, I still think that that's, like, from a lawyer perspective, I just think that's still bullshit. And I still don't, I don't like to do it.
I think we're the only team in Toronto who refuses to do it.
Yeah.
Like, we have a policy. It's like in our agreement, like, we don't do it. It's illegal in BC, obviously, you know that. And in Ontario it's legal, and I don't know anybody else in Ontario who would say no to it.
I think it's a really difficult, and I think it just puts you in a position actually that's not helpful in the long run. And I think it actually diminishes the realtor's professional reputation, like from a 100%. Policy perspective. The
biggest issues I've seen, we had a lady who had some issues, and long story short is she was in a really bad position. And I remember talking to her as the story unfolds. I'm like, you went right to the listing agent, didn't you? And she's like, yes. And I was like, how did I know? Right? Like, it was so obvious.
Exactly. Right. Yeah. And you're just, I think it's just, I think as a whole, the realtor community would be better off from a policy move that actually just, it's very difficult to ask people to act against their, to say, don't do it. I mean, you and I have decided not, we generally don't do those things, or I refer out to someone I know.
Haven't done it in years. It's like a policy.
Yeah, it's like I'll refer this out to someone, and it just goes out the door, and that's it, right? Yeah. And that's fine. And then you can get. I make $0.
I make $0. I can't even refer. I make $0 on the buy side on any of my listings. If someone comes to me and says, I want to work with you only, I say no. They get assigned to somebody else, and I get paid not $1 more. So there's never going to be a buyer where I look at them and go, oh, maybe we should take that offer because I get paid an extra X, right?
So what do you do, TK, in that circumstance? Like, we
have a big team. So like, if someone says, I have no agent, I want to work with you guys, they'll never meet me or talk to me. They'll get assigned to another agent.
Yeah, they get. Okay. So,
and I treat that agent like I would anybody else.
Like anybody else. Okay. Yeah. And that makes perfect sense, right? Yeah. And that probably, like you said, sets you up in this position where you just don't ever have to even worry about it, right?
It doesn't make a difference.
It's always, those are always the files that get like nasty, right? It's always the ones where people are like, oh, they question whether they got the fair shake, right?
Yeah. How did I lose that bidding war? I bid more than them. How did I lose that one?
Yeah,
exactly.
It's
hold on. The guy represented both sides.
Yeah, I know. And you just like, everybody's like, it just leaves a bad taste in everybody's mouth, and that's just not good for us as the profession, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, let's wrap this up. I appreciate it, Emma. You've been fantastic.
Absolutely.
We really learned a lot from you today. Maybe we can get you on again in the future and talk more.
Yeah, it was fun and nice to meet
Yeah,
you
we could have
guys.
talked forever. This was
Yeah.
great.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
talking's not my problem. Sorry.
Join the
But
club.
You're enjoying your time up, or I'm not sure what's up or down, but over at your family's chalet. So
yeah.
we'll get you
We
back.
really
to that.
appreciate the time. It was great to
Bye,
meet
guys.
you.
Great to connect.
Thank you.